And to begin our discussion on U.S.-Nigeria relations under Joe Biden, let's take this background report put together by Joy Someto.
It is the 46th presidential inauguration of the United States of America, the country that is recognized as a home of democracy. The inauguration of Joe Biden and his vice, Kamala Harris, has added 3 new pages in the history of America. The first is Joe Biden being the oldest person to emerge as the president at 78. Another history is Kamala Harris becoming the first female to occupy the office of the American vice president. And the third is their inauguration conducted in a restrictive environment without the usual 250,000 invitees.
I, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr., do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States, will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. So help me God. And I pledge this to you. I will be a president for all Americans, all Americans. And I promise you, I will fight as hard for those who did not support me as for those who did.
Ahead of the swearing-in ceremony, the outgone President Donald Trump vacated the White House. He was honored with 21 gun salutes before leaving the seat of power, and he wished the new administration well as he left a note for the new occupant of the House. The major task before the new administration is fulfilling its campaign promises as the world awaits foreign and trade policies that will be introduced by Biden and his cabinet.
Many thanks, Joyce Someto, for that backgrounder. And by the way, just to indicate that it wasn't the 46th inauguration of a U.S. president, but the 46th president to be sworn into office. Now, joining us to discuss matters arising from all of this is our regular guest on Good Morning Nigeria. He was with us, of course, when the election results were announced last November, and of course, the consequences that then followed upon its rejection by former President Donald Trump. So we have with us in the studios now the former Nigerian Deputy Permanent Representative to the United Nations, currently directing staff of the Nigerian Institute of Policy and Strategic Studies at Kuru, near Jos, Ambassador Usman Sarki. Excellency, a pleasure to have you with us again on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you, sir. Great pleasure to be with you again. Okay. Thank you.
You are smiling this morning.
No, you know, he has been smiling since yesterday because he was on our program yesterday, especially on the inauguration.
So it must be some tremendous relief, I mean, for diplomats all around the world. But let me put this to you. You find that there are all kinds of jibes when events of this nature happen. Yes. There was a T-shirt that was produced and said, "The end of an era." Yeah. E-R-R-O-R. Yes, yes, the end of an era, yes, and the beginning of a new era. Yes. Do this substantially capture what we saw yesterday, the exit of Donald Trump, and the inauguration of Joe Biden?
Well, thank you very much, and good morning Nigeria. Well, it was deemed as an error, an aberration, actually, the election of Donald Trump in 2016. It was out of the norm. He came from virtually nowhere with no antecedents or backgrounds in terms of public service, stormed his way into politics, and before you knew it, he was there as the president. And he conducted the government in a tumultuous way for the 4 years that bewildered not only Americans, but the whole world, actually. And in the process, he denigrated the essential substance of the United States of America in terms of its standing in the world, its relationship with allies, and also its position as the leading power that emerged supremely at the end of the Cold War. And a lot of goodwill was dissipated through the erratic behavior of the president who left office, that is Donald Trump. So Americans, actually, a lot of Americans who are used to normalcy in governance woke up to a situation where actually they were governed by Twitter and also in a very aggressive and irrational way. And that became a problem, not only to Americans, but to the rest of the world. So if you read the message of Mr. President, our president, which was read today, this morning, actually it was a very warm, felicitation to the new president in terms of the expectations and hope that Nigeria actually looks forward to in relationship with the United States and with the new president. And I think similar messages from other world leaders will echo this sentiment of relief and opening of a better and new chapter in the relationship of their countries and the United States. So I think everybody should smile. There is no threat of war. There is no threat of irrational action against any country or other people. There are no executive orders banning certain groups or types of people going into the United States, or unilateral sanctions against countries for no apparent reason. So it is a good thing. History corrects itself, actually. And when you allow history to correct itself, obviously and inadvertently, it becomes something that is a lesson to generations, to come. So what we are going to actually learn from this episode is that institutions and individuals manning institutions matter greatly in a democracy or in any other type of governance in order to keep the system going, functioning and working and delivering on its promises. So I think these are the ideas that one could draw from what happened yesterday and the general ambience of the feelings of people, as of this morning.
But indeed, really, as you just rightly said, when I heard you yesterday analyzing the issues at the inauguration and the rest of them,
yes.
In his speech, Joe Biden said he really wants to see a new world here with America playing its real role as it used to be, not in the past 4 years. And when we look at what really happened between yesterday evening in Nigeria and of course to this morning, and I think it's going to go into some few days to come, given the messages that will be reaching Joe Biden in terms of congratulations and the rest of them, we seem to say, we may say that there is some hope in what Joe Biden said, that he's trying to rebuild alliances and get Africa and indeed the world back into where it is supposed to be, in the U.S. playing its own role. How do you see these alliances being built in the very short time?
Well, alliances will be built by persuasion and conviction that his outreach to the world, re-engagement with the world, is sincere and genuine. And I think nobody will doubt President Biden about his honesty, integrity, and his ability to build alliances. He has been in the United States Senate for nearly 40 years and vice president for 8 years. And remember, he was chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee in the Senate. And for that reason, I think he virtually knows the whole world like the back of his hand. He has known world leaders, he has known leaders from all parts of the world, and he has known the workings of international institutions. So to my mind, I think his first outreach will be to the NATO countries, the North Atlantic Alliance, where a lot of damage, systemic damage, has been inflicted on their relationship by Donald Trump. And then he will reach out to countries like Japan, South Korea, Vietnam, Saudi Arabia, and others in Asia and the Far East, in terms of rebuilding the trust between those countries and the United States, particularly in terms of the unilateral imposition of certain payments for the protection of those countries, which was imposed by Donald Trump. For instance, South Korea was expected to pay $5 billion, dollars virtually every year for the presence of U.S. troops. The same thing with Japan. So, and then the trade deals that actually, Donald Trump pulled America out of. And he tried to impose new ones that actually, caused consternation to a lot of countries, will be looked at again by President Biden to bring a more rational sense into the arrangement, whereby you will have a live and let live type of arrangement with those countries. But fundamentally, President Biden will look at the entire landscape, the global landscape, and see where is missing, what is missing, and where. First, he will pay attention to global climate change. The Paris, climate change, conference that Donald Trump pulled America out of the COP 21 or 22, I think, and also re-engage with the United Nations in terms of carrying forward countries towards fulfilling their commitments and mandates in terms of meeting the mitigation agenda of the climate change. And secondly, I think he will look at the perhaps reviving global arms, reduction or arms controlling treaties, like with Russia, and possibly start a new negotiation with China in order to de-escalate the growing expenditure in armaments and the arms race, which is virtually fading from the international picture, but is there as an incubus weighing heavily on the defense budgets of many countries. And I think he will cooperate with African countries like Nigeria, Chad, Cameroon, and others in terms of fighting terrorism and restoring the supremacy of human rights, the protection and promotion of human rights as essential cornerstone of American policy in Africa and other parts of the world. So these are the things that we should look forward to. I understand yesterday he signed a number of executive orders repealing or actually repudiating the earlier policies, imposed on America and the world by President Donald Trump. This is a good beginning, a good sign that there are new things, fresh, things to come. As for America, he said he wants to unite, to really rebuild the soul of the country and bring different, factions, the divides much closer and narrower, in order to have a United States. Today, the United States is really figuratively not a United States, but a divided state, and he wants to unite. As a father figure, 78 years old man, he knows the importance of consensus. He knows the importance of unity and accommodation. And I think he will work assiduously to that.
And when you say...
Sorry, Notable. Ambassador Sarkis just made a very critical point in addition to what he said earlier. And I'm concerned about this for good reason, as of course you should be. When President Biden spoke yesterday, he spoke to Americans and then he also spoke to the world.
Yes.
But he has assumed his presidency under very challenging circumstances. America, of course, is the epicenter of coronavirus. America is battling with racism like never before. America is also battling with extremism, and America is battling with economic challenges. And you very well know that the management of domestic policies and issues can impact on your foreign policy focus. So while the rest of the world may be applauding and say, well, this is a new dawn, can we moderate our expectations? Because we never can tell what just might happen, say, well, elsewhere in the world or in the U.S. itself, that could then consume the greater attention of the new president.
Well, thank you very much. That is an excellent point. President Biden promised to spend $1.93 trillion as stimulus immediately, a stimulus package in the country. That expenditure will not allow him to, for instance, increase foreign aid or to actually increase the maintenance of American bases, in Africa or other countries. So obviously the expenditure at home and the massive challenge he is going to face in terms of facing the coronavirus disease and actually vaccinating 100 million Americans in 100 days, as he promised, will occupy much of his time. And that will entail perhaps reducing expectations in terms of engagement with the rest of the world. At the policy level, the engagement will continue, reviews will be made, new systemic arrangements can be put in place, but at the substantive material level, I think we should expect the minimum and perhaps hope for the maximum in terms of our expectations. So, for instance, will America increase its aid to Africa, which has fallen from around $146 billion in 2014 to around, around 80 billion in 2019? We don't know, because the resources may not be there. Will American businesses invest in Africa more? We don't know, because the government has to nudge them in terms of giving them the confidence and assurance that all is well in Africa, go and invest. So these are things that only time can tell. But essentially, the domestic priorities will be foremost in the minds of the administration, and while at the same time the foreign policy will be simply to mend fences, restore and recover lost ground, and perhaps build up, show up confidence with partners and the rest of the world. For instance, how will Joe Biden engage with China? This is something, a critical foreign policy and also a domestic policy issue for them. Trump actually, unhinged American relationship virtually with China, and in the process imposed sanctions and also delisted a number of Chinese companies from the stock exchange and so forth. These were hostile moves. But today, we don't know if Joe Biden will continue cautiously with this policy or radically alternate, the scenario and re-engage with China. So these are things that will be looked at as time goes on incrementally for the administration to establish itself and its priorities. So your question was very correct in terms of challenges at home. Can foreign policy be pursued effectively? I think they will balance the two. But with the domestic situation, which is virtually an emergency situation, taking preponderance over foreign policy considerations. But at the same time, I think they will re-engage with Mexico, review their approach and policy towards Venezuela and the rest of Latin America, because this is really the first priority of each U.S. administration, engaging with Mexico, Venezuela, Latin America, Brazil, and Central America. So I think the most effective foreign policy outcome we should see is the review of the relationship with Mexico, which has been virtually shattered by the Trump administration, and perhaps to look at the situation in Venezuela again, to accept the fait accompli in that country and work with the Maduro government and not actually trying to overthrow it.
Excellency, let's turn our attention to Africa and then see how this will really play out. Not forgetting the fact that Joe Biden has been Obama's, vice for 8 years. Yes. And during that time, 8 years through, we didn't see anything tangible coming to Africa from that regime per se. And here we are today, being at the helm of affairs, himself the president, and talking about foreign policy and Africa's benefit, Nigeria specifically in this regard. How do you see him, tilting towards Africa in trying to, mend, ties, bring benefit, and then create some mutual, relationship that will, be beneficial to all and indeed to the world?
Yes. Well, his nominee as Secretary of State, Mr. Blinken, is actually very familiar with Africa. He has visited Nigeria before, he has visited many African countries, and he knows Africa very well. The team he's putting together, I think Susan Rice will be there. There is Linda Thomas Greenfield will be there. These are people who know Africa very well. In fact, they have visited and lived in this continent for many years. So there will be a change of narrative in the administration towards Africa. But how far this change of narrative will be, only time will tell. And also how effectively we ourselves as Africans communicate our expectations, our desires, and our hopes to the American administration. It is not a one-way traffic. Diplomacy is a two-way traffic. It's between the actors. You know, they have to engage, communicate, and dialogue in terms of establishing confidence and their priorities. Where you have egregious human rights violation, where you cannot control your territory, where there are spaces that are ungoverned and taken over by bandits and criminals and terrorists, where civil wars will be raging or armed gangs will be rampaging around, you cannot expect to go and sit with the Americans and speak creditably and for them to take you very seriously. Administrations in Africa must be organized around viable institutions, around respect for law and order, around respect and promotion for human rights, around establishing the dignity of the human person as the fundamental essence of governments, around ensuring the effectiveness of security in countries. Then you can go and sit down with America or any other country as a credible actor and discuss with them the possibilities of interest that you want to articulate. So under a situation of chaos, uncertainty, disorganization, when you go to the Americans, all they can do is to say, okay, we will look into what you are going to do, what we will do for you. That is all. You will not get the promissory note that will effectively translate into currency, into assistance. But there are two things that the President Biden said he will do in terms of, reaching out to the rest of the world, for which Nigeria and Africa should prepare. First, he said he will convene a summit for democracy. I think we should go there prepared in terms of outlining our fundamental objectives in terms of achieving and consolidating democracy in Africa. This is very important. The rule of law, constitutionality, and other things, human rights and so forth, are important. So we should go there with a credible position. The second summit he will actually convene is Global Security Summit. We have a stake in that. As a country confronting terrorist actions and internal challenges in the area of security, we should go to that summit prepared in terms of what to deliver to the world in terms of our needs and expectations, and how we can contribute to the maintenance of international security in accordance with the UN Charter.
Ambassador Sharkey, very important points that President Biden has outlined for U.S.-Africa relations, of which Nigeria, of course, is potentially a beneficiary. And you've also talked about what Nigeria and Africa would need to do. Just looking at the broad labels of global security and democracy, there are attendant issues to all of this, which sometimes, if not sufficiently addressed, but also create bottlenecks towards the realization of the ultimate goals. I'll give you an example. Very little is talked about in terms of trade between Nigeria and the U.S. We have seen, for instance, that our major item of trade, which is oil, has diminished considerably. When President Clinton came up with AGOA, Nigeria benefited very little from it, or Nigeria took very little advantage of it. Other countries such as Lesotho and I think Rwanda took maximum advantage of it. Earlier you were saying, look, will President Biden be in a position to give assurance to American investors that Africa is safe? Is it possible for, say, Nigeria and indeed other leading economies on the African continent to begin to articulate trade positions with the U.S. to ensure that the African continent becomes a more attractive environment for investment, such as happened with outsourcing to China? If you recall, some decades ago, American companies were all relocating to China for production, cheap labor costs and so on and so forth, and now China, of course, has become a global economic power. But the same thing they did with Vietnam. You see how Vietnam has grown considerably. Could we make Africa much more attractive, especially now against the background of the African Free Continental Free Trade Area, where we have been told that all we'll be doing will be selling goods produced from outside of the continent? Could Africa, and particularly Nigeria, position herself to say, look, come, come and invest with us. Of course, as we are coming to invest with us, help us also deal with the issues of banditry, terrorism, and other global security issues, plus the democracy that you talked about.
Yes. Well, Africa can be a hub of investment for America, American companies, and also American businesses, but only if we actually put some factors, some conditions on the ground. For instance, it's very important for us to realize that investors do not want to come and operate in climate or circumstances of uncertainty. They want assurances and guarantees. There are African countries that are providing the conducive atmosphere and climate for investment and business. Morocco is one, Egypt is one, Senegal is one, Ghana, Rwanda, Botswana, South Africa, Mauritius, Seychelles, Ethiopia, and others, Kenya. All these countries are actually proving to be magnets for foreign investment. When we look at Nigeria, to be honest with you, if you are, Mr. Osadolo, if you are a foreigner, an American, or even as a Nigerian, knowing as a journalist how the situation internally is, will you feel free and ready to come and invest your money in this country? After looking at the circumstances, you will hesitate. Why? Because of perception created in your mind about circumstances internally. Lack of electricity power is a major challenge. Situation like infrastructure challenges, when you cannot clear your goods in the ports in 2 weeks, and even if they are cleared, you cannot transport them out of Lagos to the destination in another 2 weeks. When there are bottlenecks which are really bewildering and mind-boggling, bureaucratic, security and so forth. So the challenges internally must be ameliorated, must be corrected and removed before you will now expect the investor to come. They still do come into the oil industry, mostly the offshore industry. They go there. They are a bit secure over there relatively, and they know the returns on investment will be high. But in other areas, industrialization cannot take place when you don't have the infrastructure. Transportation, nobody will come and invest in your railways when they don't know over what period they are going to get returns on their investment. So trade is essential. Possibly the African Continental Free Trade Arrangement, if we put it well, package it well, and administer it correctly, it may remove those impediments that have so far hindered the increase of investment in Africa. So this is what we should look forward to.
Okay, many thanks, Ambassador Usman Sarki, for talking to us this morning.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
It's a great
Ambassador Sarki is a former Deputy Permanent Representative of Nigeria to the United States and a Directing Staff, Nigerian Institute of Policy and Strategic Studies, Kuru, near Jos. We'll now take a break. We take, after the break, we'll now come back to discuss our second topic of this program this morning. Stay with us.